The first time I noticed him, I didn't think anything of it. I was just a guy at his wife's work event, blending into the background like a good husband should. But something about that night felt different, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Maybe it was the way people laughed a little too loud, or the way Lydia seemed a little too radiant, a little too alive. Or maybe it was the way he looked at her. I don't know. But that night, I saw something that would change everything. I never wanted to attend these work events. Lydia's company always threw these fancy, catered dinners. Nothing but small talk, fake laughter, and men in suits trying to one-up each other with tales of success. But when she asked me to come, I didn't say no. She looked at me with those eyes, the ones that always made me feel guilty for not being more social, more involved in her life. I figured, why not? A night out, dressed up, a chance to be by her side for a change. I hadn't expected to feel out of place, but I did. Everyone was talking about their promotions, their bonuses, their latest work trips. I had nothing to offer but the same tired small talk. Lydia, however, was in her element. She was radiant, glowing in that way she always does when she's in her zone. I stood off to the side, nursing a drink, watching her move through the crowd with ease, her smile lighting up the room. And then I saw him. Ethan. I'd never met him before, but Lydia mentioned his name a few times in passing. He was one of the new hires, a sharp, confident guy in his early 30s. He had that air about him, the kind that makes people notice. He wasn't tall, but he had this presence, something magnetic about him. And as I stood there, observing from the corner of the room, I realized that he was gravitating toward Lydia. At first, it seemed harmless enough. He was talking to a few others, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. And not just a quick glance. He was watching her in a way that made my stomach tighten. She was standing with a group, laughing and chatting with them, and Ethan was leaning in, his body language a little too casual, a little too familiar. I don't know why it bothered me at first. Maybe it was the way he was looking at her, intently, as if he was trying to memorize her every expression. Or maybe it was the way she was responding to him, more than polite, but not quite professional either. I watched as Ethan took a step closer to her. His hand brushed against her arm as he made a joke, and she laughed, a genuine, warm laugh that made my heart skip a beat. I couldn't tear my eyes away. I couldn't stop the feeling that was creeping up on me. I had always trusted Lydia. We'd been married for 5 years, and I had never had reason to doubt her. She was the kind of woman who had no time for drama, no time for flirtation. She was loyal, I was sure of it. But tonight felt different. As I watched Ethan inch closer, I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling at the back of my mind. Why was he standing so close? Why was she letting him? But I wasn't about to make a scene, not in front of everyone. I had to stay calm. I tried to tell myself I was being irrational, that I was overthinking it. People flirt all the time, right? Maybe it was just friendly banter. Maybe I was reading too much into something so insignificant. But then it happened. Ethan said something that made her laugh again, that low, throaty laugh that I loved so much. And as she laughed, I saw his hand casually resting on her back. Just for a moment, but it was enough. She didn't pull away. She didn't even seem to notice how intimate it looked. She didn't step back or glance over at me, as though the hand resting on her back was just another casual gesture, nothing to make a big deal out of. But it was. In that moment, I felt the weight of it, the weight of what I was seeing, of what I was feeling, of what was happening in front of me, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. This wasn't just friendly conversation. There was something there, something more. And I couldn't shake the feeling that Lydia wasn't as oblivious to it as she seemed. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, frozen, watching them. My grip on the glass tightened, and my breath felt shallow, like I was drowning in the uncertainty of it all. What was I supposed to do? Walk up to them and say something? Confront her in front of everyone? No, that wasn't the man I was. But even standing there, pretending I wasn't watching them, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that this was something I couldn't just ignore. I tried to shake it off, but the more I watched, the more I couldn't stop myself. Ethan was leaning in closer, his voice low, his eyes not leaving hers. And Lydia? She was leaning in just as much, laughing at something he said, her gaze never leaving him. They were lost in their own little world. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that it meant nothing, that I was just a jealous husband with too much time on his hands. But the way he looked at her, the way she responded to him, it didn't feel right. And as the evening wore on, I realized something that made my heart sink even further. I wasn't the only one noticing them. Others were watching too. I could see the looks exchanged between people, the quiet glances, the raised eyebrows. People were seeing it, and that made everything feel so much worse. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like I wasn't the one she wanted to be with. For the first time, I was the invisible man in her life. And Ethan? He was the one getting all her attention. I stood there, frozen in place, watching my wife laugh and flirt with another man, not realizing I was right there, just a few steps away, watching everything fall apart. I told myself to calm down. It was just a work event, after all. People talk, they joke, they laugh. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of that. But the longer I stood there, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something between them. Ethan wasn't just another colleague. No, this felt like something else. I don't know if it was his posture or the way he tilted his head when he spoke to her, but I could see it. There was an intensity in the way he looked at Lydia that I had never seen before. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the small talk with the guy next to me, but every time I glanced over at them, it was the same. Ethan was closer, his body language more familiar, more possessive. And Lydia? She didn't pull away. She didn't seem uncomfortable. If anything, she seemed at ease, laughing with him, her eyes sparkling in a way I hadn't seen in a while. I didn't like it. At one point, Lydia excused herself to get a drink, and Ethan followed her, a little too closely for my liking. As they made their way to the bar, I found myself moving toward them, trying to look casual, trying to act like I wasn't paying attention. But deep down, I was watching every move. They were talking, and I could see the way he was leaning into her, his hand casually brushing against her back as they navigated through the crowd. Lydia didn't flinch, didn't step away. If anything, she seemed to welcome his proximity, and it made my chest tighten. I couldn't help it anymore. I had to know what was going on. I was almost ready to step in, to say something, to break up whatever this was, but then Lydia turned to me. Our eyes locked, and for a brief moment, it felt like nothing had changed. She smiled at me, that smile that always made me feel like I was the only person in the room, the only person she wanted to be with. But it didn't last long. As soon as I looked back at Ethan, I saw it. He was looking at me. He had been watching the whole exchange. And his gaze wasn't just neutral. It was challenging, almost daring me to do something. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I knew what it looked like, a challenge. And in that moment, everything I had tried to push down bubbled up. I didn't want to be the jealous husband. I didn't want to be the guy who overreacts. But I couldn't stop the feeling that something was slipping through my fingers, that something was changing right before my eyes, and I was powerless to stop it. For the rest of the evening, I kept watching them. It was like I couldn't pull myself away. Each time they interacted, it was worse. The casual touches, the lingering eye contact, the way they leaned in when they spoke. And Lydia? She never pulled back. She didn't look at me the way she used to. There was something else there, something that made me question everything. As the night wore on, I realized just how much I had been ignoring. The small things that seemed insignificant before now felt like red flags, waving furiously in my face. Why hadn't I seen this coming? How had I missed it? I stood there, frozen for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of everything that was happening. The way Ethan kept getting closer to Lydia, the way her laughter sounded too genuine, too effortless. I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in my own marriage, watching something unfold that I should have been a part of. But no matter how hard I tried to push the feeling down, it lingered, growing stronger with every glance, every touch, every laugh shared between them. At one point, Lydia's phone buzzed in her hand. She checked the screen briefly, and then excused herself to take the call. As she walked away, Ethan didn't hesitate to follow her. I thought about turning away, about ignoring the whole thing, but I couldn't. I couldn't ignore the way he was trailing behind her, the way he moved with purpose, his gaze never leaving her back. It was like he was making sure no one else could get close to her. I watched them slip into a quieter part of the venue, away from the main crowd, and my heart started racing. I shouldn't have followed, but I did. I stayed in the shadows, just far enough behind so they wouldn't notice me, but close enough to hear their voices. At first, it was just the faint murmur of Lydia talking on the phone, but then Ethan spoke. I couldn't make out exactly what he said, but the tone in his voice sent a chill down my spine. It was too intimate, too familiar. I knew that tone. That was the kind of tone you use when you're not just talking to a colleague. I tried to tell myself that I was overreacting, that maybe I was just paranoid. But the sound of his voice, low and confident, made me feel sick. It was clear they weren't just talking about work anymore. Lydia's response was soft, almost playful. She laughed again, and it was the same laugh. The one that was reserved for moments when she was truly enjoying someone's company, someone who wasn't me. As they continued their conversation, I noticed something else. Ethan was standing a little too close to her. Their bodies were inches apart. He was touching her arm now, just lightly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I was standing there, feeling like a ghost in the background, helpless to stop whatever was happening between them. I didn't know how long I stood there, watching them. My mind was racing, my chest tightening with every second. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to leave, to forget the whole thing. But I couldn't. Something inside me was telling me that I had to know what was going on. I had to know if this was something I could confront or if it was something much worse than I imagined. Then, as if on cue, Lydia ended the call. She smiled at Ethan, that smile, the one she only gave me when she was feeling special, when she knew she had my full attention. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at him. Her eyes lingered on his face for just a second too long, and that's when I felt it. The shift. It was subtle, but undeniable. The way her posture changed, the way she tilted her head slightly, the way her lips curved in a way that wasn't meant for me. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to do something. I was done hiding in the shadows, pretending I wasn't watching. I was done pretending that nothing was happening. So I walked towards them. But as I took a step, my phone vibrated in my pocket, pulling me back to reality. It was Lydia, texting me. "Come find me. I'm by the bar." I stood there for a moment, staring at the message. Was this her way of signaling me? Or was she trying to cover up what had just happened? I didn't know, but I couldn't stay away any longer. I had to face this head on. With one last glance at Ethan, I turned and headed toward the bar, my heart pounding in my chest. What was I about to walk into? What was Lydia going to say? What was Ethan going to do? The questions were overwhelming, and I felt a surge of anxiety that I couldn't control. As I reached the bar, Lydia was waiting for me, her back turned to the crowd, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for something or someone. But when she saw me, her face lit up with that familiar warmth. For a moment, I forgot everything that had just happened. But then I looked past her, and I saw Ethan. He was watching us, his eyes narrowing slightly, almost as if he was daring me to do something. The tension in the air was thick, and I couldn't breathe. Lydia smiled at me, but there was something in her eyes that made me feel like I was no longer the center of her world. Something was different, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. As I walked up to Lydia by the bar, everything seemed to slow down. My heart was racing in my chest, and I felt like I was walking into a scene I wasn't supposed to be part of. Lydia smiled when she saw me, her eyes bright, but there was something different about the way she looked at me. It wasn't the warm, familiar gaze I was used to. It was as if she was seeing me from a distance, like I was an afterthought. "Hey, you finally made it," she said, her voice light. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I smiled back, trying to act normal. "Yeah, just needed to get away from the crowd for a minute," I said, but my voice felt shaky, even to me. Before I could say anything else, I noticed Ethan. He was standing across the room, leaning casually against the wall with a drink in his hand, watching us. The way he looked at us made my stomach turn. His gaze wasn't just casual. It was possessive, almost like he was marking his territory. Lydia didn't seem to notice, or maybe she did, but she didn't care. She turned back to me, her smile widening. But it wasn't the smile that made my heart race anymore. It was the way she kept glancing back at Ethan, the way her eyes lingered on him for just a little too long. "So, how's your night been?" she asked, her tone light, almost too light. I wanted to say something, to confront her, to ask what was going on, but the words caught in my throat. I wasn't sure what to say. Should I accuse her of something I wasn't sure about? Should I bring it up and risk looking like a jealous, insecure husband? As I stood there, the air between us thickened, and I couldn't ignore the tension in the room. Ethan was still watching us, still standing there, making it clear that he was waiting for something. For me to leave? For Lydia to do something? I didn't know, but the longer I stood there, the more I could feel my control slipping away. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was going on. "Lydia," I said, my voice coming out softer than I intended. "Who is that guy you've been talking to all night?" Her eyes flicked to Ethan for just a second before she quickly looked away. "Oh, that's Ethan. He's new at work. We've just been catching up, she replied, her voice casual, like it was nothing. But something in her voice didn't sit right with me. There was a hesitation, a slip in her tone that I had never noticed before. My gut told me I wasn't getting the full story. Just catching up? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She gave me a nervous laugh, trying to brush it off. Yeah, nothing more to it. You know how these things are. People talk. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the way she said it, the way she was avoiding my gaze, made me question everything. I glanced back at Ethan, who was still watching us with that same cold, calculating look on his face. Lydia, I said, my voice firmer now. Is there something you're not telling me? Her smile faltered for just a moment before she quickly regained her composure. She looked at me, a bit too innocently, and shook her head. No, of course not. You're being paranoid. It was like a switch had flipped. The moment she said that, I felt a flood of emotions rise up. Anger, doubt, fear, but most of all, confusion. Was I paranoid? Was I imagining things? Or was there something happening right under my nose that I was too blind to see? I stood there for a moment, trying to make sense of it all. But the more I looked at Lydia, the more I realized I couldn't trust my own feelings. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, felt like it was slipping away. And Ethan, he was still watching, still waiting. It was like he knew something I didn't. I felt trapped. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I could believe the woman I had been married to for 5 years. I didn't know what to say next. Lydia's smile was too perfect, too rehearsed, but I couldn't figure out if she was genuinely trying to brush me off or if she was hiding something. The way her eyes avoided mine, flicking nervously between me and Ethan, told me everything I needed to know. For a moment, I thought about dropping it, letting the night go on, pretending everything was fine, keeping the peace. But I couldn't. The image of her with him, laughing, touching, leaning in close, kept playing in my mind. No matter how much I tried to push it away, I couldn't forget what I had seen. I looked back at Ethan, who hadn't moved from his spot by the wall. His eyes were still fixed on us. There was no subtlety about it. He was waiting for something. What was he waiting for? Was it for Lydia to come to him? Or for me to leave? Either way, the tension was unbearable, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. Lydia, I said, my voice coming out steady but laced with frustration, I'm not stupid. I saw how you two were talking tonight. Don't try to pretend it's just some innocent thing. She stiffened slightly, the smile fading from her face. What do you mean by that? She asked, her voice defensive, but I could hear the unease creeping in. She wasn't as composed as she had been moments ago. You know exactly what I mean, I said, my words sharper now. The way he's been looking at you. The way you've been looking at him. It's more than just friendly chatter, Lydia. Don't lie to me. Her expression faltered for a second, but she quickly regained control, her eyes darting nervously toward Ethan again. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, I heard a voice behind me. Is everything okay here? I turned to find Ethan standing there, his presence imposing, like he was suddenly part of the conversation. The cool smile on his face seemed rehearsed, but there was something dark behind it, something I didn't trust. Lydia froze, and I could feel her body tense up. Ethan was right there, standing between us, like he was ready to intervene if things got too heated. His eyes never left mine, and the challenge in his gaze was clear. It was like he was daring me to do something, say something, anything. I was just telling Lydia how I've been noticing the chemistry between the two of you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the anger bubbling inside me. It's hard to ignore, don't you think? Ethan raised an eyebrow, his smile never faltering. Chemistry? I don't know what you mean, man. Lydia's just a colleague. We've been talking about work, that's all. His tone was too calm, too rehearsed. It was like he was trying to downplay everything, to make it seem like I was the one overreacting. But I knew better. There was something between them, something that felt too real to ignore. The way he was acting, the way he looked at her, it was more than just office banter. Lydia didn't say a word. She just stood there, looking at the floor, clearly caught in the middle of something she didn't want to confront. I couldn't tell if she was embarrassed or guilty, but I could see the way her shoulders were slumped, the way she wasn't meeting my gaze. Ethan kept his eyes on me, his posture tense, like he was waiting for me to make the next move. I'm not blind, I said, finally looking at Lydia. I saw everything tonight. You and him. You're not just talking about work. Lydia's face turned pale. She opened her mouth to say something, But then, her words faltered. She couldn't find the right response. The truth was, I already knew. I didn't need her to say it. I didn't need to hear it from Ethan either. I had seen the way they interacted. I had seen the way they looked at each other. But the silence between us was deafening. Lydia glanced at Ethan one last time before turning back to me. She seemed lost, her usual confidence gone. I saw her lips tremble slightly as if she was trying to find the words to make this better, but I wasn't sure there were any words that could fix what was happening. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. I think it's time for you to leave, man. This isn't your business anymore. The arrogance in his voice snapped something in me. He wasn't just challenging me. He was dismissing me. Like I didn't belong here anymore, like I had no right to stand between them. My hands clenched into fists, and I could feel the anger boiling over. This was more than just a confrontation. It was a battle for my own place in my marriage, and I wasn't about to back down. Don't tell me what my business is, I said, my voice cold. I'm not going anywhere until I get answers. For the first time all night, Lydia's eyes met mine, and there was a flicker of something, guilt, shame? I wasn't sure. But whatever it was enough to break through the tension. Please, let's just talk about this, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But it was too late. I had seen enough, and I wasn't sure if I wanted the answers anymore. I stood there, feeling the weight of everything crashing down around me. Lydia's eyes, filled with a mix of guilt and uncertainty, burned into me. Ethan, still standing there with that smug grin, didn't help. His presence felt suffocating, like he was daring me to break. Let's just talk, please, Lydia repeated, her voice almost pleading, but there was something in her tone that made me feel like she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to herself, convincing herself that everything could go back to normal. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear how it had just happened, or how she didn't mean for any of this to happen. I had seen enough. But part of me, some weak, foolish part, wanted her to explain it all away, to give me something, anything, that could make this easier to bear. What do you want to say, Lydia? I asked, the words coming out sharper than I intended. What exactly do you think is left to talk about? She didn't answer right away, looking at me like she was searching for the right words. Ethan, sensing the tension, took a step closer, his tone turning even more possessive. I think it's time for you to leave. You've said your piece. It's over. I felt a surge of anger. This guy, this stranger, was telling me it was over? Was he out of his mind? But I couldn't let him provoke me. Not now. Not in front of Lydia. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. No, Ethan. It's not over until I get some damn answers. Lydia's face tightened, and for a second, I thought she was going to step in, to say something, but she stayed silent. I could feel her retreating, pulling away. She wasn't fighting for me. She wasn't fighting for us. She was caught in something, and it was too much for her to untangle. Ethan, with his insufferable confidence, moved even closer. You're wasting your time, man. She doesn't owe you any explanations. She's a grown woman. She can do what she wants. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lash out. How dare he say that? How dare he speak about her like that? Like she didn't care about me, like everything we had meant nothing. But I could see the shift in Lydia's eyes, the way she was looking at Ethan now, like she was already on his side. That was all it took. That one look. Lydia, I said, my voice quieter now, almost broken. Is this what you want? She didn't answer right away, but I could see it in her face. She was avoiding my eyes, looking everywhere but at me. And that silence, it spoke louder than any words could. It hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't fighting for me anymore. She had already made her choice. The realization stung. It was like everything I had believed about us was shattering before my eyes. And Ethan? He was standing there, smug, like he had already won. I turned to leave, my heart heavy with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. But as I walked away, I heard Lydia call after me. Wait, she said, her voice small. I stopped, my back to her, the words sitting heavily in my chest. No, Lydia. I'm done. For a moment, there was nothing but silence between us. And then, before I could take another step, I heard Ethan speak again. You should leave now. It's over. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew everything I needed to know. I walked out of the bar area, the cool air of the lounge hitting my face like a slap. My mind was a mess, a blur of emotions. But more than anything, I just felt numb. I had seen the truth in Lydia's eyes. She wasn't fighting for me anymore. There was no apology, no explanation, just a silence that said it all. I found myself in the hallway, pacing, trying to collect my thoughts. I felt the weight of the last few years pressing down on me, but for the first time, it didn't feel like I was fighting for our marriage anymore. It felt like I was fighting against it, trying to save something that had already slipped away. And then, I heard the faint sound of footsteps behind me. It was Lydia. She was walking slowly, almost hesitantly, as though she wasn't sure if she should approach me. The sound of her heels clicking against the floor was the only thing breaking the silence, and with every step she took, my heart seemed to sink lower. "Please, don't walk away," she said quietly. Her voice was shaky, but there was an edge to it. It wasn't just guilt. It was something else, something I couldn't place. I stopped but didn't turn around. I couldn't look at her. Not yet. "I don't know what you want me to say," she continued, and I could hear the strain in her voice now. "I didn't want this to happen. It just happened." I turned then, finally facing her, my gaze cold. "Happened? Is that what you call it?" My voice was low, but there was an edge of disbelief in it. "You didn't just slip into a conversation with him, Lydia. This wasn't some accident." She opened her mouth to say something, but the words didn't come out. She was shaking her head, like she was trying to convince herself more than she was trying to convince me. "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "It was just harmless flirting. It didn't mean anything." I took a step toward her, and for the first time, I saw her hesitate. "Harmless flirting? You've been saying that all night." "But I saw it, Lydia. I saw the way he touched you, the way you responded to him. You didn't pull away. You didn't seem uncomfortable. You wanted it." Her face went pale, and she took a step back. "I never meant for it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability in her eyes. The part of her that still cared, still felt something for me. But I couldn't ignore what had happened. I couldn't forget the way Ethan had looked at me, the way he had dared me to confront him. I couldn't forget the way Lydia had smiled at him. It was like everything I thought we had was slipping through my fingers. "You're right," I said, the words almost tasting bitter in my mouth. "You never wanted to hurt me. But you did." Lydia closed her eyes for a moment, as if bracing herself for the impact of my words. She took a shaky breath before looking at me again. "I never wanted to hurt you, I swear. But I'm not sure how to fix this. I don't even know if it can be fixed." I felt my stomach tighten. The words hit harder than I expected. "So what? That's it. We just throw everything away? After all these years?" She didn't answer at first. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty, regret, and something else, something I couldn't identify. And in that silence, I realized that whatever connection we had, whatever bond we had built over the years, was now a fragile thread, fraying with every passing second. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Lydia. I don't know if I even know who you are anymore." The words tasted like ashes in my mouth, but they were the truth. She reached out a hand, but I stepped back. "Please," she said softly, "don't leave like this." But it was too late. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal or the fact that I knew, deep down, I had already started walking away. I turned and walked toward the exit, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. As I pushed open the door, I heard her voice again, calling after me. But I didn't look back. I couldn't, because I knew that if I did, I would never leave. I stepped out into the night, the cool air biting at my skin, but it felt refreshing, like a cleanse. The weight I'd been carrying all night, all year, seemed to lift off my shoulders with each step I took away from the venue. I couldn't believe it was happening. My marriage, the life I thought I had with Lydia, was falling apart before my eyes. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't filled with the usual sense of helplessness. I wasn't drowning in despair. Instead, there was a strange calm settling over me, a realization that I had taken control. I didn't need to stay in a relationship where the trust had been shattered, where the person I loved no longer saw me as the one she cared about. I had worked hard, tried my best to be the man she needed, but sometimes, no matter how much you give, it's not enough. And Lydia? She had made her choice. But me? I still had the power to choose. And in that moment, I chose to walk away. The next few weeks were a blur. I focused on myself for the first time in years. I started working out again, something I hadn't done since before Lydia and I had even met. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected, laughing and enjoying life without the constant weight of doubt and frustration. Slowly, the pain faded. The anger dissipated, and I began to find peace in the life I was building without her. But karma, as it often does, has a funny way of working itself out. Lydia called me several times in the weeks following that night. At first, it was apologetic, desperate even. She wanted to talk, to explain, to fix things. But the longer she tried, the more I realized that the woman who had once been my best friend was no longer there. The apologies felt hollow, and the remorse in her voice didn't move me. I wasn't interested in a woman who had chosen to disrespect me for another man. It wasn't until one day, a few months later, that I got a message. It was from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, thinking it might be one of those telemarketers or spam texts, but something told me to open it. It was Lydia. She was begging for forgiveness, saying how sorry she was and how much she missed me. She told me how Ethan had been nothing more than a temporary distraction, and how she realized too late what she had lost. But there was more to the message. A part of her, I suppose, trying to reach me again, even though deep down she knew it was too late. "I'm so sorry," the message ended. "Can we try again?" I didn't reply. I knew the answer already. The relationship had been broken long before I walked away. She had been given every chance, but in the end, it was clear who she really wanted. And it wasn't me. Weeks passed, and eventually, I heard from a friend that Lydia had been let go from her job. Apparently, Ethan had moved on to another department, one that was a far cry from the one he'd shared with Lydia. Rumor had it that their flirtation had been more than just harmless. There were whispers about inappropriate behavior, office gossip, and, in the end, it all caught up with her. It was a cruel twist of fate, but it wasn't my doing. It was karma, settling its score. As for me, I kept moving forward. I met someone new, someone who treated me with the respect I deserved, someone who saw me as I was, not as a stepping stone for something more exciting. With time, the scars from my past healed, and I realized something important. I didn't need Lydia or anyone else to validate my worth. What I learned from it all, that sometimes the best revenge is living your life the way you've always wanted to. Walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. And for the first time in a long while, I was truly free.